Union Rags, proving Lane's End's tried and true stallion-making formula. A formula that leads to success for our partners and our stallions. Union Rags sired 3 Grade 1 winners in his first crop of runners: Paradise Woods, Dancing Rags, and Union Strike. With million-dollar progeny in the sales ring, he's a leader of his generation. Union Rags, a stallion that stands above the rest.
Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier. It's time for the big race on Saturday. Race number 12 at Gulfstream Park is the Grade 1 $9 million Pegasus World Cup Invitational. 3-year-olds and up going 1 1/8 miles. Our coverage all week long has been presented by Lane's End. And let's take a look at this field. It is a strong field for $9 million. You've got Accelerate, winner of the Breeders' Cup Classic, for sure to be named champion older horse of 2018. You've got the only horse to beat Accelerate in 2018, that being City of Light. Both of those horses are going to be retiring after this race and heading off to Lane's End to stand their first season at stud, but by no means are they the only contenders in the race. You can download free formulator past performances for the Pegasus World Cup on the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com. Access them, handicap along with us. Matt and I are going to take the field in post position order, beginning with the really likable throwback, the number 1 Bravazzo. $1.3 million already in the bank for Bravazzo, and he dances every dance.
Day shows up, this distance isn't going to be an issue for him. He tries his heart out. More often than not, there's at least 1 or 2 better than him, but I do think this is a newly turned 4-year-old that maybe we have yet to see the best of him to this point. Now, this race on Saturday, maybe it's going to be a little bit tough, but at the same time, like I said, a newly turned 4-year-old, there's no reason to think that his best race is not still ahead of him.
And despite all those races on his resume, all 3 Triple Crown starts, races in the Haskell and the Travers and the Pennsylvania Derby, he still popped his 2 career best Beyer speed figures in his last 2 races. He is simply Hickory, and he draws an advantageous inside post position. The number 2 is Something Awesome, and we talked about him a little bit in the contender profile. He's going to be a big price in this race, and there are ways that handicappers can look at him in that he's dirtied up in his last 2 races and that he's getting back to his preferred distance.
Yeah, I mean, there is a way that you can spin a positive out of this horse, but at the same time, I can understand anyone that looks at it and says he's just not fast enough, plain and simple. I want to take sort of the other side of it and say, you know what? I understand the Charlestown Classic. It's run at a little bit of an odd configuration, but if you believe that raw time form rating of 128, that puts him right there as fast as Accelerate, as fast as City of Light. The Pimlico Special, obviously something went wrong. He was gone for some time. And to be honest with you, if you haven't seen that 7/8 race at Laurel, to me, that was an ideal prep. He came with a run at the end of it. He was down on the inside, not where you want to be at Laurel Park. The winner that day came back and won next out with a 100 Beyer, Colonel Sharp. To me, look, he may not be the most likely winner, but at 20-1, I think he's actually got a puncher's chance.
He can certainly spice up the exotics, and he can be forward at 1 1/8 miles. Another horse with a good post position, and the great veteran Edgar Prado's going to break. He's going to let the speeds go, and he's going to sit in mid-pack, probably while saving as much ground as possible going into the first turn and into the backstretch. The number 3 is City of Light. Again, he's going to retire to Lane's End to stand alongside his sire, Quality Road, after this race. And what can you say about City of Light? Throughout his career, he's been good at 6 furlongs. He's been good at 1 1/8 miles, and that was a big scalp he took down and Accelerate the Oak Lawn handicap at this distance way back in April. The Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, he just blitzed him.
Yeah, he was awesome that day. That was a big league performance, that 110 Beyer, highest last out in the field. He has tactical speed, doesn't have to have the lead, but to be honest with you, I think he's at his best when he is out there dictating it. I was mistaken earlier when I talked about him in my podcast. I didn't know he was retiring after this race. I thought this could be the beginning of a big sort of 5-year-old campaign for him. Well, maybe he still goes out in winning fashion. I think you can make the argument he is the horse to beat in here if it's not him as Accelerate or vice versa. You brought up the fact that the only defense defeat for Accelerate in 2018 was to City of Light. I think it's going to be interesting to see how much pressure he takes early on. To me, that's going to be the key for a horse like this at 9 furlongs, which I personally believe he's slightly better going a one-turn configuration. Doesn't mean he can't win this race.
Perfect segue for our Timeform US pace projector, which has City of Light, a horse that doesn't need the lead, but is probably going to get it, breaking from post 3 and the speeds to his outside out there on the lead. Timeform US's red bar indicates that this pace might be fast. That could be worrisome as City of Light tries to stretch out from a mile to a mile and an eighth. I disagree a bit with the pace projector. I know pattern recognition is very fast. He's going to have to gun from post position 12 to get position, but I think that the favorite Accelerate is going to be closer than Timeform US has him. He has that ability. I don't think he wants to be in behind horses. I think he's going to break and sit second or third.
It's going to be interesting to see what you get from him, because I think part of the reason that he has been a few lengths off of these past couple races because they've featured very, very hot paces, and then all of a sudden he's pulled himself into it rounding the far turn. I think he can lay a little bit closer to the pace. I do wonder, I mean, you take a look, he's got that big bullet work in his back pocket from the most recent one, 58-4. You can't help but think that he's feeling good and he's going to be forward. I do think, I think a little bit's going to be up to Joel Rosario. I mean, if all of a sudden pattern recognition, which again, we'll talk about him in a bit, but it seems like there's one way for Jose to go, and that's to send him. If he and all of a sudden you get a horse like City of Light, and maybe you get one of these other horses that's intent on being forward, at least you know if something crazy develops, you know he can sit and still be effective.
Let's talk about the number 4, Seeking the Soul, our 4th millionaire in the field already. I thought he bounced in the Clark. I think they ran him back too quickly off that big effort in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. This was just flat. John Velasquez was keeping him inside when he could have gone outside because I think he needed to save as much ground as possible just to get a piece. There was nothing in the tank a quarter mile from home. If he runs back to his race in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, heck, if he runs back to that Grade 1 win in the Clark over this distance back in 2017, he has a puncher's chance, especially if the pace is fast. So I'm just going to assume they wheeled him back in 20 days. He bounced in the Clark. He's been given ample time to recover.
And like the good news for a horse like this, you know, on his best day, he's at least close anyway. His best buyer of a 105, that puts him right there. That's the same figure that Accelerate earned winning the Classic. There's a part of me that all of the sudden, I know he's a 6-year-old and we've seen him a number of times. To me, the 2 best races he's run recently are those 2 one-turn races down at Churchill Downs, 2 and 3 starts back. It does make me wonder if all of a sudden he's been crying out for one turn all along. Having said that, he is still very, very capable at 9 furlongs. I would be using him underneath. I don't know if he's quite ready for a win contender, but I'd be using him in 3rd and 4th.
Accelerate's banked $5.7 million. He's heading off to Lane's End after this race. His Breeders' Cup Classic, he had to overcome post position 14, but as we mentioned, that good tactical speed got him forward, got him outside of traffic, and he moved into the teeth of a pretty hot pace, took things over. The closers were coming. There was no quit for Accelerate, who, as we know, began his career as a horse that was really good at a mile and an eighth. We wondered if he could go a mile and a quarter. It seems he can do anything. He's the horse to beat.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, look, he had a tremendous 2018 campaign. We'll find out. We're recording this Thursday. We'll find out if he ends up winning Horse of the Year. We know he's going to win Older Male. That race in the Classic, it may not have been one of his best races, but it's already come back solid. You had the 5th and 9th place finishers come back and earn buyers of 194. And then also you had the 12th place finisher, McKinsey, come back and win next out in the Malibu with a 103. So the form of that race has held up. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of race we get from him. I assume he's sitting on go. This is going to be sort of his swan song. I think you're going to see everything he's got.
Keelan Grad, the number 6, Tom's d'Etat. He's not a millionaire, but all he's done is win 6 of 9 starts, including 4 in a row. And he's come back firing off an extended layoff with 2 wins and the combined margin of victory 11 and 3/4 lengths. Tom's d'Etat won the Tenacious last time out. I thought in workmanlike fashion. I know there were a lot of handicappers that were expecting showtime in the Tenacious, but Al Stoll knows how to bring a horse up to a big race. We remember Blame winning the Breeders' Cup Classic off kind of a subpar effort in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. I wonder if Stoll has got Tom's d'Etat ready to fire on Saturday.
It's possible. My only knock with this horse, and it's not necessarily against the horse, it's just strictly from a gambling standpoint. I think he's the wise guy horse of the race. I think many people are going to look at him and say, basically, he's done nothing wrong. He's run fast already. Now he's going to get a little bit of an acid test, but let's call a spade a spade. If all of a sudden Accelerate runs in a low 100 sort of buyer, if City of Light perhaps doesn't appreciate the 9 furlongs, some of these other horses stub their toe, Tom's d'Etat, all of a sudden he is there. To me, it's just one of those instances. If he's 10-1, I just think that's a little bit on the light side. I expected more in that Tenacious. I wasn't totally thrilled with the effort. He can win, no question about it. I just think he's an underlay.
True Timber by Lane's End Stallion Mineshaft, giving it a shot around 2 turns. I think he's better around 1. He is 0 for 6 lifetime around 2 turns, but he earned his spot here with a rock-solid second in the Cigar Mile, a race in which, the pace just really didn't develop. I think Copper Town it was in that race, and he just didn't really show any speed. He didn't break very well. Mendelssohn just wasn't very aggressive coming out of the gate, and True Timber had to rally into Pattern Recognition's pace. He ran quite well that day. I'm just concerned about the distance in the class.
Yeah, I think it is one of those things. It's very, very straightforward. Take a look at his 2-turn races recently anyway, a mile and a 16th and a mile and 1/8. I say recently, it was all the way back in 2017. The Discovery, what happened? He got tired at the end. The Sir Barton, what happened? He tired down the lane. And the Wood Memorial, he tired down the lane. I don't think he's a 2-turn horse.
Gunnevera's going to win one of these one day. He's earned $4 million in his career. He loves Gulfstream Park. He was 3rd in the Pegasus World Cup last year. And while he's won some big races like the Delta Jackpot and the Fountain of Youth and the Saratoga Special, he might be remembered going into this race as the horse that was 2nd in the Travers, again 3rd in the Pegasus, 2nd in the Woodward, 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Classic. This is a horse, if you give him pace, he's going to roll late, but he's got to get the right trip. He'll be last early.
I was going to say, he's going to be coming from the back of it. He's an honest horse. It's hard not to like a horse like this that just shows up and runs. More and more I watch his tape, and he has these very, very bold mid-moves in the race, and he stays on, but he just kind of loses that big punch, and it makes me wonder a little bit twofold. Maybe a little bit shorter. Maybe he wants a 1-turn kind of configuration at a mile where he can come with that big blitz, similar to what we saw from a horse like Frosted in the Met Mile a few years ago. Again, I'm not saying he can't win a race like this, but between that and then possibly he's by Dialed In. Dialed In's been okay as far as turf runners are concerned. At some point, I wouldn't mind seeing him at a mile on grass.
Up next is the Mexican super horse, the number 9 Kukulkan. 14 starts, 14 wins, many of those wins by the length of the stretch, and he ran at Gulfstream last time out in the prestigious Clásico del Caribe, a restricted race, and all he did was win by 10 lengths. It all sounds good until you break down the Beyer speed figure. A 70 Beyer speed figure isn't going to come close in the Pegasus.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's kind of what it boils down to. He's a neat horse. It's a great story. We've got a little bit of international flavor here, but at the same time, if you're just being honest from a handicapping standpoint, it's hard to make a case for him to hit the board.
I really wanted to make a case for Todd Pletcher's number 10 Audible, who took Gulfstream Park by storm in 2018, sweeping through the Holy Bull in the Florida Derby, en route to finishing 3rd in the Kentucky Derby. His Cherokee run, his first start off a long layoff on Breeders' Cup weekend, I think we discussed it as sort of a workmanlike race, but it was a sprint, maybe at a distance too short for him, and he had the layoff as an excuse. The Harlan's Holiday, you can look at it one of two ways. You can say greasy wet track, wide trip, no pace to run into, prep race where he might not have been cranked 100%, and all things considered, then it looks good. But just visually, he's on his wrong lead on the turn. He couldn't beat a horse named Sir Anthony, who, while he did save way more ground than Audible, just shouldn't be in Audible's league. I just can't bet him off that race.
No, and really, I think that's kind of the way that I looked at it. I mean, again, this is a horse that we talked about it, like you said, before the Harlan's Holiday, saying he needed to prove, he needed to jump up from a speed figure standpoint. He had kind of, it seemed like, plateaued with those 4 consecutive 99s, and I get that it was a sloppy wet track, and not all sloppy tracks are made the same, but my goodness, how can I use that as the excuse when in the Kentucky Derby over a monsoon, you looked fine, you almost got there, you finished 3rd. I just look at this and say, man, at no point did he look good in that Harlan's Holiday. It's Pletcher at Gulfstream. I won't be surprised if he runs well, but he won't be anywhere on my tickets. I just thought he ran so poorly.
Imperative will go over the $3 million mark in career earnings on Saturday. No matter where he's finished, he is a cool 9-year-old that has done some really nice things in his career, has faced the best of the best. I'm just not sure where he is from a form standpoint. He's been well beaten in his last few races, and they're just taking a shot.
Yeah, I was going to say his form has certainly tailed off from his best. I will say, again, it's one of those things. His form might not look good right now. If you can just keep him sound until Charlestown and run him back around the bull ring, maybe he's got a chance.
Chad Brown had to be so disappointed after the post position draw. Pattern recognition, maybe not fast enough to outhoof City of Light for the lead, but certainly could have been sitting in second without using too much energy. Now from post position 12, if they want to utilize those tactics, Jose Ortiz is going to have to really hustle. And that, coupled with the additional distance, this is going to be the first time around 2 turns for pattern recognition. That may put him in a little bit of trouble, but he's a talented horse.
I was going to say, more and more I think about it, at face value, it seems very obvious what this horse needs to do and what Jose needs to do. It's send and try to get up there and establish position. But when you think about it, I suppose if you wanted to really get kind of creative, maybe he doesn't absolutely have to be up there on the lead like he was in the Cigar Mile. He's shown at least that he can sit. And I agree, going out to 2 turns, going a mile and an eighth, I don't love all of that going against him. But maybe the Connections will be content sitting off of City of Light at that point, and maybe the pace doesn't materialize as much as maybe I think it will, or the pace projector. If that happens, then all of a sudden, if you think that there's a scenario where he can take to the distance and the configuration by sitting off of City of Light and kind of boxing in, accelerate, I don't know, maybe he is a little bit more intriguing. I just think this post is very tough.
He has fast races. He did have ideal setups in his last 2 races, but he is a very good gate horse. He beat the gate in the Cigar and put the pressure on the other horses to go. And when they didn't, he made the lead. If he breaks sharply, we should see him being very forwardly placed going into the first turn. Pick time for the Pegasus World Cup. I think City of Light's inside draw makes him very tough. I respect Accelerate. I think he's going to be real tough in here. But I think City of Light, if he can get to the lead and at least get a breather at some point, might be able to fend off his nemesis, Accelerate. You're going for a big price with something awesome, a 9 furlong lover.
Yeah, I mean, 1A and 1B are City of Light and Accelerate, or Accelerate City of Light, however you want to chop it up. They are strictly the horses to beat. I think they are the most likely winners. Something awesome, though, I kind of feel like there is a scenario where if you think he can get back to his best effort, I think he's at least in there with a puncher's chance. I would definitely be using him as far as exotics are concerned, but I genuinely believe there's a chance where if a 105 is what it'll take to win this race, I think he has a chance to hit that, and I think he can possibly get it done. More likely than not, he's used underneath it, and that's kind of the best position for him. But I'll take a shot with him. 20-1 on the morning line for the 2 something awesome. Give me numbers. 2, 5, 3, 8. I'm
going to go with City of Light, 3, 5, 12, 8 in the Grade 1 Pegasus World Cup Invitational. $9 million is the purse. Approximate post time is 5:36 Eastern, and our coverage has been presented by Lane's End.